Welcome everyone to the municipality of Strathroy-Caradoc and our Finance Committee meeting on December 9th, 2024. Roll call. Deputy Mayor McGuire is absent with notice. Any declaration of pecuniary interest? Seeing none, motion that the December 9th, 2024 Finance Committee meeting agenda be approved as circulated. Councillor Kennis, second by Councillor Hippel. All in favor? Carried. Motion that the report FIN 2024, the proposed 2025 operating budget, be received for information. Councillor Brennan, second by Councillor Kennis. All in favor? Carried. I'll now turn it over to the CAO and Director Dakin. So whoever's going to go first, the floor is yours.
Thank you. Through the chair to council. So tonight we're looking at the operating budget for the first time. In keeping with the same theme as the capital budget, with the number of programs and studies that came in during 2024, late 2024, a lot of the operating budget for 2025 is more or less just hold the line, as there are several studies that have come in late in 2024. So the first quarter of 2025 will be addressing both the capital outflow of that as well as the operational outflow of that. So that really is very similar to the notes that were part of the capital. The next slide talks about sort of where we're at. So as I've already said, our focus in the 2025 budget is more along the lines of cleaning up our, excuse me, the outstanding projects from 2024 and previous years for the capital side, and again, working together as staff and council to align those studies that have just been received, some yet to be received, to come up with our operating budget moving forward from 2025. One thing I should note, a couple things with the schedule that's already been gone out with the operating. So the 24 actual is year to date to the end of October. So November and December's expenses have yet to be seen in those actuals. So there is some discrepancy. The differences are basically those 2 months worth of expenses have yet to be incurred. The other thing that should be noted in some of the changes that took place in 24, specifically in the legal and legislative department with the clerk, CAO, and admin assistant moving around there. The numbers show the about 130,000 decrease in the budget for them, and what's happened is one of those positions fell out when we were doing this, so that will need to be added back in. But the good news to that is there was also a position in HR on the full-time side that was to the tune of about 130,000 that needed to come out as well. But to that note, you'll notice that the part-time position in the HR department was eliminated because of the addition of a full-time. That has come, that will need to get added back in. So the net result there is about 94,000 of savings in the HR department, with the 130 in legal legislative, as well as there was some PPE replacement for the Strathroy station for the fire department of about 26,000 that needs to get added back in. So the net effect of all of that jumping around is about 62,000 needs to be added back in to the budget that is showing in front of you. So just so council's aware of that. And again, I just need to remind council two things. First of all, the numbers that we're talking about here are levy increases at this stage. They're not the rate increase. So the way we get our rate increase is we take what's required, what we're requiring in our levy, divide it by our assessment. Those numbers should be coming out shortly from MPACT, so that we can calculate that once we have what our levy's gonna be set at, we can get our rate. So that will come in the January meeting. We'll have a rate, the tax rate, hopefully figured out to what that will be for the January meeting. But right now, what we're discussing is those levy increases. So when you see percentage increases here, and dollar figures, those are based on actual levy of tax that we need to raise in order to meet the obligations of the municipality. Yeah, so the next slide really is something that came out of Councillor Wilsey's discussions last year, and just wanted to throw it back in again. And we can update that once we get our new numbers from the province, from MPACT. We can update that, but you can see here sort of the lion's share of our assessment is obviously residential, as well as the farm. Are two main categories of assessment within the municipality, and they account for the lion's share of our numbers. And you can sort of see the division as well between the two wards. So just picking on those two, farm, almost 20% of the farm assessment is sitting in Ward 2, whereas less than 1% is sitting in Ward 1. When it comes to the residential, about 26% is sitting in Ward 2 in residential, and 37% is sitting in Ward 1. And those numbers will get updated in January as well, once we have the new numbers from the province. Let me just move to the next slide, which is sort of where we're at on our total taxation, just keeping in mind the previous discussion about we're looking at right now about $22,886,722 $1,000 is required for the current 25 budget. We need to add about another 62,000 to that in order to make up those discrepancies that were found when we're going through this. I'll turn it over to the CAO at this time to talk about the first point under here.
Tricia?
Thank you, Director Dakin. So we have included in the operating budget $400,000 to specifically speak to the service delivery review. So the service delivery review is scheduled to come forward to Council in January for adoption, and we wanted to include funds within the budget so Council can start to implement and prioritize some of the items within the service delivery review. So we're not looking tonight for specific allocation of that $400,000, but that there is $400,000 specifically allocated in the operating budget for that project. So as Director Dakin mentioned at the start of the meeting and back on sort of that first slide, is putting all the puzzle pieces together of everything that sort of have come out in the last few months, putting a comprehensive action plan forward in the first quarter of the year for Council, and then moving forward with that. So I did want to just highlight that for Council's information.
Thank you. Thank you for that. So also just in regards to our last council meeting, there was discussion around possible support moving forward for Caradoc, Strathroy-Caradoc Housing Corporation. That has also been placed in this budget. It is under the former Grants and Taxation Department, if you want to call it that, but I think we now call it Finance. So really, because of the income that comes in through interest and those kinds of things, it really doesn't affect levy per se, but it is those two numbers. The Service Delivery Review Initiative funds and that money, the placeholder for the Strathroy-Caradoc Housing Corp. Those funds typically, if not needed, could go into reserves as such. So right now, using those numbers that we have, we're now looking at basically a 999, so just under $1 million increase in operations, so the 937 plus the 62. So it'd be just shy of, just a little over 4% levy increase that we're looking for council. And then in light of the discussions that took place at the previous capital, there was the request to add another 500,000 or 2% in levy increase to the capital for the Tri-Township discussion that was brought forward at the last capital. So with those two numbers, we're sitting in just below that 7% levy increase that was discussed very early on in the process here in the Finance Committee meetings. Just keep in mind that really, short of those sort of larger numbers of 400,000, the placeholder for the Strathroy-Caradoc Housing Corporation and the 500,000 for Tri-Township, really what's in front of council tonight is an operating budget that really reflects just cost of living and inflationary costs as far as a lot of the programs go. So I guess I'll leave it at that, and then we can take some questions. Several of the directors are here to answer specific questions about specific line items, but overall, I would say that with those numbers in hand, that's where we're at right now, around that 7% levy. Keep in mind that a levy increase is usually higher than a rate increase because of just the way the ratios work with dividing the levy by the assessment. And typically the assessment does go up. We haven't got those numbers. It's usually around the 2% mark. So we will have that actual rate increase once we get to a levy number for council.
Okay. Thanks, Director. Before I move to questions, I'm going to go on to the motion though to accept. So the proposed 2025 operating budget complete with any changes made at this meeting be forwarded to a future Finance Committee meeting in January to review both the proposed 2025 operating and capital budget together. Just someone to bring that motion. Councillor Brennan, second by Councillor Kennis, all in favor. Carried. Now we'll open up to questions. Councillor Pam.
I'm just wondering if the director can go through the community development changes because the budget there has changed significantly. I'm looking at page 31 of 38.
Yep. So I'll be happy to start out on that, and then I'll refer to the Director of Community Services to sort of provide the highlights. As you recall, last year, Council amalgamated, or merged, I guess would be a better word, the Community Services and the Downtown Market. They were separate departments. And those two have been merged now into one department under the services, community services. I'm just moving to that page. And so that is why you're sort of seeing some changes there with that budget because of the merging of those two pieces. I don't know if there's something more specific the director would like to point out.
Councillor Pammer has a follow-up.
But if it was merged last year you had an operating budget of 137,000, and this year it's 136. Am I reading that correctly?
Yes.
So I'm just trying to understand what the difference was from this year to next year.
Director Littleborn, or Director Dakin, whoever chooses to answer.
I'll let Director Littleborn take that call.
Through the chair to Councillor Pammer, the lion's share there is wages. So the community development budget did not have wages. So we took the farmers market and we moved it over into the community development. So in the farmers market was a wage for part-time staff, We've also gone out and we've allocated staff's wages to the business units in which they spend their time. So 50% of the booking coordinator's time is now allocated to community development and not 100% to recreation. Part of their wage now is divided up between Gemini and West Middlesex because of allocation for ice and so on. So we've split out our full-time staff across the different divisions. So that's one of the reasons why you see the change there.
Councillor Wilsey.
So on that, as we're following up, because I remember last year, we had a $30,000 allocation for the downtown market. And I'm assuming that that would have been rolled into the 2024, they gave us 137. But now looking at 236, we're $100,000 more, so there's $100,000 of costs that, for the downtown market, that we didn't, that were just being absorbed in a different department before, is that what I'm hearing?
Director Wilmore.
Through the chair to Councillor Wilson, not just the downtown market, but all of the special events. So 50% of the booking coordinator's wage is going to go towards special events, and then 50% of her wage goes towards booking and coordination.
Yep. Councillor Derbyshire.
Thank you. I'm just gonna hit the downtown market one more time and say, we're asking people to come up with things like the arena needs to be more cost effective and user fee paid for. Why is this market not user fee paid for? Why are taxpayers paying for this? This looks to me, when I just talk about the garden boxes or the planter boxes and us gonna pay for them, this is a prime example of taxpayers paying for something that not everyone's using. I don't even know what the percentage of the municipality would be that uses this. I know it's only $30-something thousand, but when we get going on about user fees need to go up to make this more cost effective, this, that, and the other thing, how close are the user fees coming to paying for this place?
Yeah. Director Wilmore, did you want to answer that?
Through the chair to Councillor Derbyshire, you're gonna give me a few minutes and I'll pull up the management reporter and see what we had budgeted last year for the cost recovery with regards to the market. So you're just gonna have to give me a few minutes.
Okay. We'll move on to another question when you're ready, Director. Further, more questions? Councillor Peltman.
The animal control budget, did we tender that out this year? I was trying to remember that.
Yeah.
We did. We did. Okay. Councillor Wilsey.
So looking at the, I've got questions about the service delivery review. I've got questions on two parts of it. One of them is we have the 400,000 that's allocated to put it in. And we're told that it's gonna happen in the first quarter, but I guess I don't know what the timeline is for us putting that forward. The second part of that is since September, we were told that the operations budget was being delayed so that we could implement the service delivery review. And now we're told we're not gonna do it until next year and we just have to push it through. That's the whole reason that we were told back in September that we couldn't do the operations budget and we couldn't start our finance meetings just because we had to wait for the service delivery review to be completed because it was going to be implemented this year. And now I see it's not implemented and it's just increasing our budget for next year and we're not making any changes. If I'm wrong, could we please hear from the CEO or staff what changes we're making in this budget that caused us to delay the operations budget for 3 months?
Through the chair to Councillor Wilsey, because we didn't know what the service delivery review was going to contain, we had to wait to see what it contained, and then even based on what it does contain, there is still a lot of information work that needs to take place before council can make decisions on its content. So it still needs to be adopted from council, and that won't take place till January. And then from there, council will have some further discussions on the specific content of the service delivery review, and then we'll be able to provide staff with further direction from there. So there still is a lot of work that is required out of the service delivery review.
Follow up, Councillor.
Yeah, a follow-up on that and then a new question. So
Yep.
basically when we were told that we were waiting for the service delivery review because it was gonna change the budget, that isn't actually going to happen because the timeline we were given doesn't line up. So that's fine, that's the answer I got. In the service
Just
delivery,
one sec, just the CAO would like to comment.
Sorry, Your Worship, I don't believe that's the answer I provided.
that is, you said that it's gonna take too long to put in, but back in September, you told us we were delaying the operations budget because we were going to implement changes in the service delivery review. And now there's no changes and just extra money. So that is what you told me, is that now we're not making changes and implementing it because it will take too much time.
Just allow the CAO to comment there, Councillor.
So we have put $400,000 within the budget to start on the service delivery review. We did not know what amount to put in the budget till we actually saw the plan and what it contained. So we are moving forward with the commitment of the service delivery review and giving council the money within the budget to start implementing that plan.
Yep.
Well, Eddie can follow up, but
Nope, that's.
were you done?
I got something else, go
Okay,
ahead.
Go ahead, there, Councillor Dubach.
Just on that note then, essentially it sounds like to me, you're just moving forward with what the plan is, we're putting 400,000 in and we're going forward with it.
No, I'll jump, no, that's
Because,
not,
but we're getting to a point where this is gonna be March, April, May, June before we get this thing done.
the service delivery, but at some point in time, I'll jump in here. At some point in time, you have to make a decision and move forward, so the funds are allocated for contingency, but we have to proceed with the operating budget with, in the back of our mind, there could be changes due to the service delivery review. We haven't, council hasn't accepted it, hasn't been presented to the public, but we do need to get the operating budget moved forward so we can, and if changes are made, staff have allocated dollars for the implementation. So we have to proceed with the understanding something could change at any point in time during the budget year.
Yeah. I'm just gonna say, it feels cart before the horse again. If we couldn't get it done and can't get it done, you're putting 400,000 in there, which is essentially what you need probably for the whole thing, which is where it will probably end up just being approve the whole thing, we need to get this through, ram it through, get the budget done.
Councillor Pelican.
I was just gonna say that, you know, when we start talking about the service delivery review, there's gonna be a lot of in-depth conversation. And in municipal government, you only have one time each year to allocate resources towards a project, and that's through the budget. And if we don't allocate anything this year, then we wait till the following year. And you heard the director say that if the money is not spent, it will go into reserves. So we're not spending anything until council has an in-depth conversation and decides what we want to do. But if we don't set any money aside, then we can't do anything.
Correct. Yep. Councillor Wilson.
So I guess that, I'm hearing the comments, but those don't actually address the question. And I'm just gonna restate my question. I don't expect an answer, I'm gonna move on to my next one.
Yes.
My question was, why did we delay the operations budget when we knew we couldn't get the service delivery review done? That's what we were told in September, that we were delaying the budget, and now we're not actually making changes except putting money in. I realize I'm not gonna get that answer, that's
Yeah,
fine.
that's fine.
My next question, when we look at the service delivery review in the last 10 pages of that report, it talked about the operations and how much of the operations budget was spent in every department for the last 2 to 3 years. And it showed that between 30 to 50% of the operations budget for every department that was in that report were not spent in the last 2 years. I'm looking at this budget, and I'm looking at the year-to-date unaudited total, which takes us to the end of October, and it puts us on that same path where 30 to 50% of the money in every operations department will not be spent. We have $20 million left to spend in operations to the end of October. So unless we've spent as much in 2 months as we spent in 10 months, we're gonna end up 30 to 50% short in operations for 2024 as well. So why do we need increases in any department if there's 30 to 40% of the money in the budgets aren't even being spent every year? Because we're not getting that much of a transfer into reserves. So if it's not going into reserves and it's not being spent, I'd like a clear answer of where it's going and why we need more increases again.
Director Dakin.
Through the chair to Councilor Wesley. So, A, you're correct, reserve transfers haven't been made. So, looking at just water and wastewater alone, you're looking at almost $7 million worth of reserve transfers. So of the 20, $7 million is gonna go just like that. There's other departments, I don't have them at my fingertip as to what their reserve transfers are, but they would have to be made yet. Again, in fire, I can speak to fire. Fire, their payroll is usually done in November, so that was delayed this year. So that's still to come. So the lion's share of the fire budget is payroll, so that will come. So I think, all that to say, I think we were tracking, if I'm not mistaken, at the end of the second quarter, for about an $8 million surplus. The third quarter is coming at the December 16th meeting. So those numbers will be out as to where our surplus will be at, but I think it's, I don't think it's 30 to 40% or 50%. I don't remember the numbers that were quoted, that is left sitting in budgets.
Okay. One more, Councilor, I'll let some other people ask questions.
Yeah, I just want to follow, because the service delivery review showed the year-end numbers for the last 2 years, and 30 to 50% of the budget had not been made and had not been transferred to reserves. Not even 2024, the previous 2 years.
Just,
And-
Councilor, can I just caution, because the service delivery review has not been made public, the staff.
The document that I'm referring to is the draft document that came out in September. They were in that document.
Okay, I just
and that's
want,
a
I'm just
public-
being careful.
Yeah,
about
that's a
the
public
last-
document.
Okay, that's
It's
all.
the same numbers.
Yep, that's fine, I just being cautious because.
I'm referring to the September
Okay,
document.
that's fine, that's cool.
So, talking about that document, that showed the last 2 years that we hadn't spent all the money. In our budgets for the last 3 years, there have not been, the reserve transfers for every department have been budgeted to zero. So all we're putting, the reserve transfers that you're saying are coming, when you look at the last 2 years, they did not go into reserves. They didn't get spent. There's no budget line item for reserves, and we're not spending all the money. So if we're not spending the money, and it's not going into reserves, then why are we asking for increases again in almost every department when there's 30 to 50%? Like, I can't make that math work.
Okay. Any other, do you have a follow-up or just any more questions? Okay, Director Dakin, did you have anything? I didn't know, saw your finger on the button there.
No, I was just, I don't, to be honest with you, I don't know how to answer the question from the standpoint of, I think I've explained that the bulk of the reserve transfers haven't been made yet, that were budgeted. So there's obviously budgeted reserve transfers that are each department puts aside, most departments, I shouldn't say each, most departments put aside to budget money for future. And like I said, the lion's share of that is probably between water and wastewater, which is around $7 million. Reserve amounts come before this council at the end of every statement, so those will be coming in, now that you received the statements last week, those reserve transfers will be coming on the on the December 16th meeting. So I think it's pretty transparent where the money goes. I'm not sure if I'm being accused of hiding money or what, but it's.
Okay, follow-up, Councilor Derbyshire.
Sorry, I'm just gonna say, I don't think he's accusing anybody of hiding money. No, he's not. What he's saying is, the review, this servicing review that we're all relying on and paid so much money for, says each department has 40 to 50% or 30 to 50% carryover. Nowhere did he say, you've stolen it, done this.
All right, let's not go down a road.
But I think the problem is, you have documents out here, we're not working with everything all put together. You wanna just go through this and approve it, then just approve it. And we'll all meet back here when we have every document in place and can actually have a real conversation about what's going on. Otherwise, we're dealing with placeholders and fairy numbers and reports we're not allowed to talk about, but we've seen, like, this is just, it's almost asinine.
Fair enough. Next question. More questions on? Okay. Seeing none, well, there's no more. Yep.
Any questions?
Sorry, I didn't see a Steve hand was up there high enough.
That's okay. Through you to whoever is gonna answer this, not exactly sure who. For the bylaw enforcement, there's an increase of $61,000, and it said That there were contracted services. What services are we contracting through for bylaw enforcement?
Connor, you can move right to the front row if you want there.
So through the chair to Councillor Pelkman, that is we're starting negotiations and looking at parking in the downtown. Those numbers are being set aside at this stage. As well as some of the but some of the differences within the bylaw was last year, we had that second position within bylaw that wasn't full for the full year. So when you look at the budget to actual, there's that piece as well.
Councillor Wilsey.
Just want to go back to reserve funds and just ask a question. I'm looking on page 22 of the document on the water reserve. And I know there's water reserve transfers, and they've gone into it. Because I've seen it on the reserve document that we presented. But when I look at this document, and I look through and I scrolled through the summary that we have to review on the right-hand side of the last 37 pages, almost every of them, there's only about 600,000 that's gone into reserves for each of the last 2 years. Not the 3 million and a bit. And then I look at this water and wastewater, which I know there's been about 2 million that's gone into that reserve. But the transfer to reserve, when I look at the different ones, I don't see, you know what? Sorry, I was looking at the income side of that. But still, when I see the transfer to reserves under the expenses, that line is blank. It's got to transfer to rate stabilization reserve, not the reserve fund. So I'm just looking at the numbers, and they're not. You're just gonna approve it anyways. I'll just.
Director Dakin.
I think you answered the question through the chair to Councillor Wilsey. So the 2.1 million to rate stabilization reserve is a reserve fund. So it is indeed over 2 million being put in that reserve.
Other questions? Okay.
Do we have an answer? Sorry, just.
Oh, sorry, yeah, sorry, Rob. Yeah, thanks, Bo. Question, Rob?
Through the chair to council, the market had a cost recovery last year of 58%. The biggest difference this year from last year is we've allocated staff's wages to the business units in which they're going to be attributing their work to. So if you bear with me for a second, the booking and special events coordinator, 50% of her time will be to special events and the downtown market. Not specifically the downtown market, but special events and the downtown market. The supervisor of recreation programs and community liaison, 20% of their time is going to be associated to special events and the downtown market. Not just the market, but special events. As well as 3% of the director's time is associated to special events in the downtown market. So when you start, we didn't have that breakdown the way last year, the way we have it this year. So that's why you see an increase in full-time wages applied against special events and the downtown market. The only wage that really would be market focused would be the part-time wage of which is the part-time student that we hire in the summertime to help manage the market.
Just follow up.
Yeah, follow up on that. So there's nobody to shut down the roads or that's all paid for as a normal job. And essentially what you're saying is out of the 30,000, we recovered 15,000, about half of what it costs us. So it's a $15,000 project for the ratepayers.
Through the chair to Councillor Derbyshire, roughly, give or take some there.
Okay. Any further questions on the operating budget? Councillor Wilsey.
going through and looking at the detailed, without specifically going in any different one, there's general categories for each of the different ones that have grouped together numbers. We don't really know what, and everything just gets all standardized and everything's are grouped together. And the descriptions are okay, we can look at them and we see numbers, but we can't, there's not enough information there to actually ask questions about any of those specific categories. At least in detail where we could drill down to what that money is actually being used for. But is this our last opportunity to look at the operations budget? We look at this one summary and that's it? And then we approve it next meeting and then it goes forward?
No, I think there's two further approvals, as the motion said, another one in January, but it does go before council as the final, so at the minimum, you have two more kicks at the can, for lack of a better word, at the operating.
But this is the only detailed one, because the next one is operations and capital together, and then the finance meeting, and then after that it goes to council. So this is our most detailed time.
I can't answer this, I can ask Director Day, you're looking to make sure the detail is at the next meeting, correct?
So, through the chair to Councilor Wilsey, so at the bottom of the summary page is a section where there's detailed operating budgets available on request. So if you would like detail beyond what's here, I'm more than happy to provide that to you.
Okay,
So,
it would follow.
just as a follow-up, if we do ask for detail, then, but the next meeting that we're bringing the capital and operations together and approving that in our next meeting, and then it's going to council. So if I do get detail and we're just going through it and we want to go through it and we only have an hour meeting, when are we going to be able to ask the questions if somebody wants to go through it? Like, it seems like there's no time for that now that we're just ramming it through.
You bring the questions and we'll go as long as we need to get the questions answered, Greg. That's my commitment. If it takes 4 hours to sit here, might not like it, but if there's 4 hours worth of questions, we'll sit and answer all the questions. That's our commitment. Councilor Brennan.
But I will make a comment. Council votes, and at any point during that process, if there's a majority of people who want to stop discussion because we've been here for 4 or 5 or 6 hours, we can vote to do that. So just to say, the mayor can make that commitment, but a 2/3 majority of council can vote to basically say, okay, we're done, and let's bring forward a motion.
I'm a workaholic.
No, I'm just saying that, I just want people to understand that
Yeah.
the mayor can make that, but council can also vote.
That's right. Any other questions? Seeing none, I go to the second item, which is the budget request from Caradoc Housing. If you recall, there was a motion and report from the board of Caradoc Housing. The following motions were brought forward, and I don't need to read them, but essentially, the board of Caradoc Housing said they have financial trouble. They were looking for a place marker of $500,000, and just to kind of piggyback on the Councilor Derbyshire placeholder, I will tell you, I actually requested that this be on, because I do see it as a budget deliberation. I mean, to just put a placeholder there, I mean, I take the veracity, I am on the board of Caradoc, Strathroy-Caradoc Housing. But I think as council, as mayor, it behooves us just to check that number and to double check where we're at with Strathroy-Caradoc Housing. So that is, I'm gonna make a motion that I would like to make, that council, let me get the verbiage here. Council engage a third party to review the finances of Strathroy-Caradoc Housing, to just check the veracity of that, to see if there are ways out of it, to check the liquidity. I'm not giving the right verbiage. Essentially what I'm saying is this, folks. I think as a council, we need to have a sober second thought, a third set of eyes on the budget, and see if what the exact placeholder is, and to see if there are levers we can pull to help with the financial liability of Strathroy-Caradoc Housing. And I spoke to the director, and I am gonna ask for a sole source. I know under our procurement bylaws, you can't sole source, but I think we need to see this turned around quickly so we can have it for the next budget meeting. Tim Welch Consulting, some of you may know him. Has over 30 years experience in affordable housing. He has 9 employees. He works with a number of housing agencies, including Whitby, Kitchener, and Penetanguishene. One of the things he does is act as a housing and development and finance coordinator in a number of projects. I think as a council it would behoove us, let's just have a look at those numbers, see where they're at, and see if there is a path forward on the financial viability before we make any decisions. So that's my, I'm making a motion.
Okay.
Counselor, and if somebody wants to second it, Counselor Kennis, now we're gonna open up both. So you just needed a seconder on it.
Why is council making this decision when your board should be making it for yourselves to find out what's going on and then report back to us? I thought we didn't have, we're not involved in you guys at all.
Do you mind, can I answer that?
Yeah.
Actually, because the board did their governance and fiduciary responsibility and came to council with the problem. So to go back to the board as a council, we would be seen to be punting the problem that the board brought to us. And to answer your question, Counselor, we do have something to do with it because under the Articles of Incorporation, Strathroy-Caradoc Housing creates affordable housing for the purposes of the municipality. And in the last part, I can't remember what paragraph, it states that the assets returned back to the municipality. So all I'm saying is this, is Counselor, I think council needs to step up and make a decision and do, because we're being asked to put money into this. Yep.
So when I asked that we get an appraisal months
Part of
ago,
it, yeah.
no, not this past one, months ago,
Right.
I was told I had to ask your board because it was your asset, your property, you're in charge, you own it. You came to council and said, can I have some money?
Yep.
Now you want me to tell taxpayers to put another bit of money into this so that we can find out whether or not to give you money?
No.
Why, at some point, why is this board not coming with their plan, or at least saying, we don't have a plan and we're gonna have to dissolve because it's like, on one hand, you're saying this is all ours and we control it, and on the other hand, you're saying, please help us and you can do whatever you want now. Like, we're talking out of both sides of our mouth. When we don't wanna move forward with something, then you own it, it's your property. When you want help, it's like, well, you can come in and do whatever you want now. You are the property manager holder person.
Yeah, I don't have, my rebuttal would be this, end of the day, Counselor, where we're at today, taxpayers do own it. We've asked the taxpayers for a large chunk of money to keep it viable, and I think for the small expense of some, between $5,000 and $10,000 to have someone look at it. You yourself just said we're being asked to put a number that we don't know, when we're talking about the service delivery, we don't know what that number is. So that's what I'm trying to do, so let's find out what the real number is and see if there's a plan moving forward. Councillor Hippel, then Councillor Kennis, then Councillor Wilsey.
Okay, through yourself, probably to yourself. Is this money, or is this for both? Is this for? Yeah,
It's
for
Strathroy, yeah, it's Strathroy-Caradoc housing in its entirety, not just the one building, the entire place.
That was my first
Yeah.
question.
Councillor Kennis.
Just a comment, I don't necessarily disagree, I don't disagree with you, but I think ultimately this is our problem and we've got to deal with it. And it just keeps droning on and on and on, and I think we gotta get a clear answer on the finances and where this goes in the future, and then we can, move forward one way or the other, so.
Sorry, Councillor Wilsey.
Yeah, I just wanted to agree with both Councillor Derbyshire and Candace on this. I think we need to get a decision, we need to move forward with as the Strathroy-Caradoc housing, there's a couple parts there. We don't have the experience at the time in affordable housing to go through and come up. We're making our best guesses, we're doing what we can, but there's only so much we can do. The reports that we're getting they're there, but they aren't tailored to be read by the general public, and just with accounting numbers and intercounty transfers and non-cash amounts, like most of the board has never dealt with that. The other part that I wanted to bring up is that to Councillor Derbyshire is that this motion didn't come from the Caradoc Housing Board, because the Caradoc Housing Board hasn't met since November, and we don't have another meeting scheduled to January. So if we wanted this to go back to the board, for the board to say that we want to do this, we'd have to wait for January and then wait 2 weeks to get it on the agenda, and we wouldn't be talking about it till late January or February. So for that, hope that's all right. I'm speaking for the chair and the secretary, but we haven't had a meeting. This didn't come from the board, and it's logistics.
You can flip different hats around, Councillor. Any more? Sorry, Councillor Derbyshire.
It's not that I don't understand, it has to go through. It's this process itself where we flip-flop like this, that drives me nuts and has made this place what it is. On one hand, council was making decisions, then a board made decisions, now we don't make decisions. Now it's like, what are we doing? Like, and I get it, we also have an audit that we asked for back in July. Where's that thing?
Yeah.
Like, where, no, I'm actually, that's a legitimate question I will ask now. Where is that audit? Where's the status of it? And when are we gonna see that?
Through the chair to council, so I've been following up with BDO, and they know that, that this needs to be done. They are going to be reaching out to council members for conversation. They have received all the information from the municipality regarding this, and I am touching base with them weekly on this.
And just, Councillor, I share your frustration. All I'm trying to do is bring this to a head for the betterment of the community. So I'm like you, I'm frustrated. Councillor Hippel.
So through yourself, so us making decisions before that audit comes to fruition, like, is this going to, when that audit comes out, is that gonna be changing some of the plans, some of the ideas, some of the thoughts moving forward? Like, I don't want, like, this is necessary. I mean, I worry about the residents at Queen Street. I worry about the whole entire thing. But at the same time, I know that we need to move forward, but I'm worried about this audit coming, but not coming until, I don't know, April, May? Like, and then does that change what does that change for us?
Can I let Councillor Pammer finally chime in?
And I would agree, Councillor Hippel. I mean, ideally, part of the reason why I was somewhat hesitant personally about coming forward to council was because I thought it would be nice if we had that report. Like, if we could put it all together and give council a full picture, then we could sit down and have a fulsome discussion with everything we need to know on the table. But unfortunately, BDO has dropped the ball, and I know that the CEO is on them about that. We're doing our best to get that. In the meantime, I don't think it will change, though, this part that we're looking to get done today, because that's going to be, I liken it to, if my business was in trouble, I would go in front of somebody, and somebody of wisdom, either a bank manager or whatever, and say, hey, look, here's what's happening. What should I do? What should I sell? What should I move around? What should I refinance? I mean, you have that discussion, and that's what I kind of liken this to. I don't think that then when we get the audit, I think it would just complete the picture. I don't think it was going to change that financial information, that financial advice necessarily.
And just for clarity, then I'll go to Councillor Kenneth. The audit is a procedural audit. It's not a financial audit. It's going to tell you what happened, when, and where, but it's not going to change the financial picture. It's just going to be a historical reflection of what happened. Okay. Councillor Kenneth.
I was just gonna say it, I think that audit looks at how we got here,
Right.
the past,
As opposed to the financial.
and the budget, or the other one is moving forward, like, now, the buildings are pretty much at full capacity, full cash flow now. It's like, can this thing be successful moving forward? I think those are the two parts. I think they're both important, but I think they're
Councillor
two.
Derbyshire, then we'll bring it to a vote.
So this report will be asked by council, will be brought back to council for council.
For council.
So it's our report on their place.
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah. Okay, gonna bring,
Go.
Sorry.
Let me ask one more thing.
Yeah.
Then what do we do? Then we have to direct the board to do what we can ask them to do, what we want, what this thing says,
yes.
and they can choose to either do it or not do it.
Well, I would suggest since,
I'm just throwing it all out there so that we
No, that's fine.
understand going forward what's going on.
I would strongly suggest we can tell the board what to do because we backstop the mortgage. Councillor
Well, I
Kennedy.
just say we hold the money lever, right? So they're the ones asking for 500,000, so, yeah.
Yeah. Okay, all in favor?
May I read the motion?
Yeah, go ahead, sorry. I
Alright,
kind of mumbled.
Okay, thank you, Mayor, and that's why I like to clarify, so, I did boil this down to, that council engage a third party to review the finances of Strathroy-Caradoc Housing Corporation, and further that council award the financial review to Tim Welch Consulting as the sole source contract.
Okay, thank you. Yeah, all in favor of the motion? Opposed, if any? Carried. Thank you. We're now, next Finance Committee meeting is Strategic Priorities and Finance on Monday, January 13th. So a recommendation, the Finance Committee approve the proposed 2025 meeting dates as presented. Someone to bring the motion? Councillor Kennis, second by Councillor Hammer, all in favor, carried. Motion to adjourn at 5:51. Councillor Brennan, second by Councillor Kennis, all in favor,